Picture this. It is late at night. The house is completely quiet, and you are lying in bed, bathed in that harsh blue glow of your phone. Right?
Oh, yeah. The classic doom scroll.
Exactly. You're just mindlessly scrolling through social media, swiping past the usual updates, a dog video here, maybe a news headline there, and then suddenly there it is.
The posts.
The post. An old friend just posted about a massive promotion at some prestigious company. Or maybe it's a sprawling 10-picture gallery of their seemingly perfect sun-drenched vacation in the Mediterranean.
Or an industry award. Those are the worst.
Right. And in that exact second, before you can even process it rationally, this tiny, fleeting thought pops into your head. It's so fast you almost miss it, but it whispers, well, at least I'm still doing better than them in this other area of life.
Yeah, or on the flip side, that voice just drops like a physical stone in your stomach and says, wow, I am really, really falling behind.
Yes, it is such a visceral reaction.
It's almost involuntary. And yet, it's something we almost never admit out loud to anyone, not even to our closest friends. We treat that thought like an absolute crime.
We instantly feel this massive wave of guilt for even having it, right? It's a totally taboo feeling, so we usually just bury it immediately. But today, we're ripping the lid off that guilt. We're going on a deep dive into the raw machinery behind those late night thoughts.
Which is so needed. Because we spend so much energy on this.
We really do. We're examining the profoundly taboo nature of comparing ourselves to others. And look, we aren't doing this to make you feel bad or to point fingers. The mission here is to unpack the actual mechanics of why we crave that fleeting feeling of superiority, how modern society kind of actively weaponizes that craving against us, and ultimately how we can actually survive with our sanity intact in a world that is completely obsessed with ranking.
It's a vital undertaking, really. I mean, if you actually map out a normal day, it is astonishing how much of our finite mental energy is spent just managing these invisible hierarchies, usually in total secrecy. It is exhausting.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to really get to the bottom of this, we have to start by challenging that immediate crushing guilt we all feel.
Right, the guilt.
Yeah, since childhood, the messaging has been relentless, Be humble. Don't be arrogant. Keep your eyes on your own paper. But when you look at the psychological research, you see a really bold pivot, this reflex to look over at your neighbor's paper. It isn't a moral failing at all. It is strictly biological.
It is entirely hardwired into our neurology. Psychologists refer to this mechanism as social comparison. There's this brilliant foundational observation that perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, the playground example, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine two 5-year-olds running a race across a playground. Think about what happens organically. The child who realizes they are running faster naturally laughs, right? They feel this spontaneous burst of joy and security.
They're winning.
Right. But the child who realizes they are slower naturally furrows their brow and tries harder, pushing their little legs to catch up. Now, nobody sat those 5-year-olds down with a corporate management textbook and taught them the concept of benchmarking.
Right. They didn't get a lecture on competition.
Exactly. They didn't learn about social dynamics. It simply happens. It's instinct.
So it's basically a baseline operating system for human beings. But I mean, why? What is the evolutionary benefit of a 5-year-old caring if they are slightly faster than another 5-year-old?
Well, it comes down to how the human brain processes uncertainty. The brain hates ambiguity. It fundamentally requires a reference point to reduce its own baseline anxiety about where it stands in the environment.
Just if you don't know where you stand, you don't know how to survive.
Basically, yeah. The philosopher Albert Camus made a really profound observation about this. He pointed out that human beings are thrown into a world that, well, it does not come with an instruction manual.
No rule book glowing in the sky.
Exactly. There is no objective rulebook that clearly defines what enough is. Like what constitutes a good life. What does successful actually mean in a strictly biological sense? We inherently have absolutely no idea. So, to figure out our coordinates, we are forced to look around at everyone else.
That relativity is just wild when you really break it down. I mean, think about a student who gets an 8 out of 10 on a really difficult exam. If they find out the rest of the class got a 9, that 8 suddenly feels like a devastating, humiliating failure.
Yeah, their brain processes it as an actual threat.
Right. But if they find out the rest of the class got a 5, that exact same score of 8 feels like an absolute triumph. They feel like a genius.
Or take salaries, which is an even more visceral example for most of us. Earning $20 million feels fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
You feel like royalty if you live in a neighborhood where everyone else is earning $10 million. But if you take that exact same $20 million with the exact same purchasing power and put it into an office where your peers are making $100 million, you suddenly feel impoverished. You feel like a failure.
Wow. The objective mathematical number didn't change by a single cent. Only the context changed.
Because context is the only thing the brain can actually measure. We don't just live on the absolute value of what we have. We survive based on our relative position within an invisible social hierarchy. The brain uses that relative position as a stabilizing mechanism.
So when you get that late night feeling that you are doing a little bit better than that friend on social media, it isn't necessarily about malice.
Not at all. You aren't plotting their downfall. It is literally just your brain letting out a deep neurological sigh of relief, realizing, okay, we aren't at the very bottom of the tribe. We are safe.
I think of it almost like a GPS system. A GPS cannot figure out where your car is just by looking at the car itself. It doesn't work in a vacuum.
Right. It has to ping a satellite.
Exactly. It has to constantly ping a satellite thousands of miles up in space, bouncing a signal off something else entirely just to calculate its own coordinates. In life, we're constantly pinging the people around us. Our friends, our coworkers, complete strangers on the internet.
Just to figure out our own social coordinates.
Yeah, we need them to establish our status in the world.
That is an incredibly accurate way to visualize it. It's a navigational tool. It is a survival reflex designed to help you move through the social landscape without getting exiled or left behind.
But if this is just a natural biological GPS system, like a totally neutral tool for navigation, why is it causing us so much profound, paralyzing anxiety today? Why are we all so stressed about it? It seems like modern society has taken this basic survival reflex and just pumped it full of steroids.
Oh, absolutely. Because we are living in a state of profound structural hypocrisy. The environment we live in is completely mismatched with the biology we have.
Yes, the hypocrisy of society on this topic is staggering. We hear the preaching constantly. Stay humble. Everyone is on their own unique journey. Don't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel.
Right, the usual platitudes.
But structurally, literally everything holding our society together is a ruthless ranking system. We rank the top universities, the Fortune 500 companies, the highest grossing movies, the top influencers online. We are constantly told to ignore the scoreboard by a culture that only functions because of that exact scoreboard.
And if you look at the historical context, the scale of that scoreboard used to be manageable for the human brain. Think about our ancestors. For thousands of years, you might only compare yourself to, a few dozen people in your immediate village or your local cult.
So your biological GPS was only pinging a very small, contained local network.
Precisely. But today, the multiplier effect of the internet and social media is absolute neurological chaos. In just 10 minutes of looking at your phone on a Tuesday morning, you are comparing yourself to thousands of people all over the globe.
And they aren't even real. You aren't even comparing yourself to real, multidimensional humans. You are comparing your messy, chaotic, behind-the-scenes reality to their perfectly curated, heavily edited, mathematically optimized highlight reels.
The human brain was simply not designed to process that volume of social comparison. It is basically like a DDoS attack on our natural GPS system.
It totally overloads the circuits. And it leads to a really dark place philosophically. When you are constantly pinging millions of perfect avatars, you lose your own coordinates entirely.
What's fascinating here is how this ties perfectly into the work of the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre. He has that incredibly famous quote, which is almost always deeply misunderstood: hell is other people.
Right. When people hear hell is other people, they usually picture being stuck in standstill traffic or dealing with an awful roommate or like a terrible family Thanksgiving dinner.
Exactly. They think it just means people are annoying. But Sartre was getting at something much more terrifying. He was talking about the nightmare of the gaze. Yeah, hell is the experience of defining your entire identity by how other people look at you. Imagine you were at a networking event. If you only feel successful because society labels you a vice president, or you only feel intelligent because your peers nod at your ideas, you are no longer living as an authentic, independent self.
You become an object.
Yes, you are living purely as an image, a label in their eyes. You become completely alienated from your own actual existence because your reality is outsourced to the opinions of strangers.
Wow, that is chilling. And when you layer Fyodor Dostoevsky on top of that, it gets even heavier. Dostoevsky wrote about how human beings are absolutely terrified of being what he called a normal number.
The fear of being invisible.
Exactly. We have this deep existential dread of waking up, commuting, answering emails, going to sleep, and eventually leaving this earth without leaving a single meaningful trace behind. We don't want to be just a statistic in the corporate machine.
And when you view human behavior through that lens, that desperate need to feel superior to someone else takes on a whole new meaning. It isn't really about ego or arrogance. It is an escape hatch.
It's us fleeing from the absolute dread of our own insignificance. If I can point to someone else and say, hey, I am ranked higher than them, then I exist. I matter. I am not invisible.
Precisely. It is a defense mechanism against the void.
Yeah.
If I am better, I have a defined shape.
That makes complete sense when we are talking about people struggling to climb out of the bottom or the middle. But I want to pivot here because the insights don't just apply to the people feeling left behind. What about the people who are actually winning? What happens when you finally claw your way to the absolute top of that scoreboard?
Well, you experience something quite tragic. It's what we might call the existential drop. You realize the absolute fragility of building a house at the top of a mountain of comparisons.
There is a vivid story from the source that illustrates this. Imagine a person who sacrifices 10 whole years of their life to become the absolute best in their firm. They give up their weekends, they alienate their family, they take on massive, crushing stress, and they finally do it.
They win?
Yeah. They secure the massive title, the corner office, the wealth, the industry respect. They are undeniably at the top. But then they go home. They are sitting alone in their quiet house at night. The adrenaline of the chase wears off, the emails stop coming in, and this terrifying, creeping question hits them out of nowhere.
What if I'm not better than them tomorrow?
Exactly.
And that question reveals the existential trap. Let's look at the mechanism of why that adrenaline wears off.
Yeah.
The brain's goalposts are always moving. If your entire sense of value, your entire justification for those 10 years of sacrifice is built on the fact that you are better than someone else, then your value is completely dependent on them.
You don't own your own identity.
No, the scoreboard owns it. And because the scoreboard is dynamic and constantly updating, you have unknowingly become a slave to a race that literally has no finish line. As long as your self-worth requires someone else to be below you, you will never ever be secure.
Okay, hold on though. I have to push back a little here. Are we saying ambition itself is inherently toxic? Because if everyone just sat around satisfied with their internal vibes and never compared themselves to a standard, society would collapse.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally wouldn't function without the surgeon who wants to be the absolute best in our hospital. We need engineers pushing boundaries to build safer bridges. We need athletes pushing the limits of the human body. Competition builds the modern world, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and that is a crucial distinction. We're not saying ambition is bad. We have to look closer at what ambition actually is, and the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche dismantled this perfectly.
What did he say?
He argues that there are two distinct types of motivation. From the outside, they look absolutely identical, but on the inside, the engines driving them are completely different.
So what is the difference between the two engines?
The first type is ambition, driven by internal strength and a desire to create. Imagine someone sitting down to write a book because they genuinely have a story burning inside them. They are fascinated by the human condition and they want to master the craft of writing purely for the sake of the craft itself.
Okay, that makes sense. Pure creation.
Right. But the second type is ambition driven entirely by comparison. This is someone who sits down to write a book strictly because they want to be more famous or sell more copies than a rival author they despise.
Oh.
Yeah. From the outside, both people are just sitting at a desk typing away. They both look disciplined and ambitious. But the person driven by internal strength is generating something new. The person driven by comparison is a parasite. They are just trying to stand on someone else's shoulders.
Wow, that completely reframes it. So if I'm trying to beat my rival, I actually need my rival to exist. I'm tethered to them. One engine is fueled by curiosity and self-expression, and the other is fueled by insecurity and the need to dominate.
And Nietzsche warns that the second kind, the ambition fueled by comparison, isn't real strength at all. It is a profound form of weakness disguised as ambition. Because the moment your rival stops writing, or the moment they pivot to a different career, your entire motivation evaporates. You are entirely dependent on them to give your life meaning.
Okay, understanding that pure comparison is an existential trap is incredibly clarifying. But, I mean, living that reality is a completely different challenge because, let's be real, we still have to pay rent.
Of course.
We still have to go into job interviews and prove we are better than the other 10 candidates in the waiting room. We exist in an inherently competitive capitalist system where we have to make a living. So how do we practically survive and thrive in the system without losing our minds? How do we engage with the scoreboard without letting it own us?
This is where we have to turn to the Stoic philosophers for a brutal reality check, specifically Epictetus. The absolute core of Stoic philosophy is recognizing the dichotomy of control. Epictetus taught that the vast majority of human suffering comes from tying our baseline happiness to things that are structurally outside of our control.
Right, like I can control my own inputs, I can control how hard I study for a certification or how many hours I spend prepping for a major presentation at work, but I absolutely cannot control how naturally brilliant my coworker is.
No, you can't.
And I cannot control if a 22-year-old, faster, sharper, tech-savvy prodigy walks into the office tomorrow and suddenly makes my skill set look completely average.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is vital to remember who these Stoics actually were. They have this reputation today as being calm, detached monks hiding away in peaceful monasteries.
Right, like they were just meditating in the woods.
But that is entirely historically inaccurate. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of the Roman Empire, managing brutal wars, plagues, and endless political scheming. Seneca was a fabulously wealthy, powerful politician navigating the lethal court of Nero.
Oh, wow, so they were in the thick of it.
They lived in the most highly competitive, cutthroat, dangerous environments imaginable. But they survived mentally because they internalized a fundamental truth. Placing your happiness in something that someone else can easily take away, like your rank, your status, or your public reputation, is a guaranteed recipe for misery.
Because the moment that prodigy enters the room, or the moment the algorithm changes and your social media metrics drop, your happiness evaporates. It was never yours to begin with. It was totally out of your hands.
Exactly.
So the actionable takeaway here for you, the listener, isn't to suddenly stop trying to be great. The Stoics weren't advocating for laziness. It's not about giving up your goals or abandoning your ambitions to just float through life. It is about shifting the metric.
Yes, the internal standard.
You have to change the anchor point of your motivation. Instead of constantly looking outward and asking yourself, am I better than them? You have to start looking inward and asking, am I living up to my own potential? The fight is no longer out there against the rest of the world. The fight is entirely inside against your own limitations.
That internal shift changes the entire texture of your life. You are no longer trying to navigate using a compass that someone else magnetized. When you navigate by comparison, your needle is constantly being yanked toward whatever they are doing.
Right, you're just reacting.
But when the standard is internal, you find your own true north. You still work incredibly hard, you still compete in the marketplace, but you are no longer a slave to the anxiety of the scoreboard. Because if you give a project absolutely everything you have and the market decides someone else still beats you, your sense of self remains completely intact. The external loss doesn't destroy you because your standard was internal.
It's about building a psychological foundation that actually lasts. Because, to summarize this whole journey we've been on today, that fleeting feeling of superiority you get when you're scrolling on your phone late at night, it isn't evil. It doesn't make you a bad, toxic person.
It's just biology.
Yeah, it is just a passing breeze. It is a biological reflex, a little hit of dopamine trying to soothe your evolutionary anxiety about where you stand in the tribe. It feels nice for a second, sure, but you cannot build the foundation of your life on a breeze because the wind will inevitably change direction. There will always be someone younger, faster, smarter, or richer.
You have to step off that endless cycle of calibration if you ever want to find actual durable stability.
Exactly. So for you listening to this right now, we urge you to take a hard, honest look at your own life and your own daily grind. Ask yourself, what is truly driving you when you wake up in the morning and start answering those emails? Are you running incredibly hard because you are trying to build something meaningful based on internal strength? Or are you just running out of breath to avoid being a normal number?
This raises an important question, and it is the final profound thought the analysis leaves us with. It asks us to strip away all the external noise. Imagine a world where there was no one left to compare yourself to, no one to beat, no one to lose to, no audience watching your progress, no followers, and absolutely no scoreboard to record your wins. In that complete vacuum, well, who would you actually want to be?
That hits right at the core of human identity. And I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to mull over today, something to really test where the engine of your ambition is actually located. Think about the biggest goal you are currently chasing right now in your life. Maybe it's a promotion to director, maybe it's finishing a creative project, maybe it's a massive financial milestone. Hold that goal in your mind. Now imagine you achieved it tomorrow. You reached the absolute summit. But a magic spell was cast that ensured absolutely no one on Earth would ever be allowed to know about it. You couldn't post it online, you couldn't tell your closest friends, your parents would never know, and your rivals would never see it. If absolutely no one could know, would you still want it?